Okay, just something to look at there. Okay, last part of the inner house of leaves. Chapter 4. So there was tenant squares, also tighter squares. One of these places was way out in the woods on these dirt trails, and we called this place the circuitry or the Senate. Now, this was like a big octagon shaped cement structure that went, I don't know, probably 15 feet up in the air, 20 feet. And then it had this hole in the middle, and you could stand on the top of it. So it kind of looked like a star on the top of it. And there was these Mad Max bike trails throughout this wooded area that you'd have dirt bikes on and other things. It was training grounds too. And this was behind a park on private property. So a lot of beings got trapped in these huge standing up storm sewer openings with lids on them that were laid out precariously throughout this dried up, jagged creek bed. And then you could throw things down into those lids once you close them. And they were like containment units for some of these night hunts and day hunts. In this area too, there was angel and demon sigils by this bridge that you crossed over, and this time incursion of troves of homeless looking possessed people that were running down into this one area in the back off two trails. And the other trails we called the hell hunts that led to this pit junkyard. This place had like hundreds of cars, some of which we drove, and the area had little cliffs around it. So I wrote on the Senate tenant building, that big cement structure that stuck out with different parts of it, like a star. Let's start our own adventure. So on that Senate structure, it was like, which really was like a bomb in this area, in fact, with all that had condensed into that little structure. This term then got coined in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, on the other side of this, there's a huge red T, my initials, other things. We always left our tags everywhere. And then a big skull. And this area was part of the Atlantis Lemuria space program secret wars that were happening when the Tesla tech was being employed upon a whole city at this time, and the fatal raw space program meltdown happened in that time bubble where Ra's ship exploded over an old train building parking lot. So not far from that place was on this thorny lane, just happened to be more space wars. It's just like wreckage upon wreckage and debris upon debris that got scattered into many, many areas and missions. So these are remnants and relics of the past that certain people have went and picked up. Some of the space program kids are too wounded to go to these places and pick up pieces of themselves or even spirit or soul fragments or consciousness. But it's completely possible, even though John's body was destroyed here and there. Sometimes his body was even buried in places or even sacrificed in places. Healing can still happen. Now, me and Casbolt's bodies were in stasis for the longest periods of time for some reason. So we'd have things that happened when we'd see like clones popping up, for instance. We called it Cartoon World, and things were just getting really, really weird around you all of a sudden, all at once, and people acting very strange. So it was like a weasel game. You'd pop up into another body and say something or do something erratic, totally out of context, and then you'd never see that person again. So in those instances, we called that Cartoon World. Now back to this wooded area that Dungeons and Dragons, the Hell Hunts area, the trails, really dense woods. This was an area where Ra's body actually got sealed into the earth in a square, tenant-like, military guarded, razor wire fenced off area. And this was much like the Psychonaut and others that had graves in Oz, many fallen ones. And these beings were compressed into time lock layers of the earth. Some were even petrified, like in the old world. So around the corner from here was Katniss, where that term was coined. And so many others, and 75% of all character files came from Oz, and even in the Blacklist, they name parts of the Ozarks. And he goes and he gets taken, Red gets taken into a building that they try to convince him is, I think, Italy. Well, that actually happened on Jefferson Avenue Hotel in a building that is designed to be completely Italian. And there's a lot of Thelemite worshipers in this building that used to be in. It's gotten very cleaned out lately by Intel. So anyways, Katniss, back to that. This was an area where a cat hybrid woman was trying to train children in a trailer in her backyard. And there's a huge red cat head on it, like a cat grooming place. So she ended up getting fried in this trailer that she had trapped kids in. And then the kids ended up escaping. Down from this street was 2 Frankenstein-looking houses on Nettle Lane. And down around the corner from that is where I had an energy rope attached to my leg by a fallen angel that had, it's like a rogue small fragment of a fallen angel or something, whatever this thing was, that was stalking me. Crowley stalked many of the time travelers, other people in time that were into sorcery. We butted up against the world's best sorcerers at many times, and whatever the Kingdom of Darkness would send out as assignments, and we usually break those arrows by total reliance on the Most High, Yahuwah. But anyways, this little fallen angel thing had tied somehow an energy rope, is what I call it, to my leg, to my ankle. It was trying to keep me prisoner. On that, he had tied a cement or cinder block to it and was dragging me into a back trail by this creek to sacrifice me. So I ended up finally mustering up my courage, cutting the energy cord, a blue strange fire that was burning into my flesh, into my ankle and my leg, off of me, and got free. So my leg was burnt. I couldn't run very well. My eyes were all screwed up after that. Because when you ingest strange fire, it takes a while for faces actually to start sinking back to normal, and you see organic, clear, precise, and clean timelines, because strange fire messes with everything. It's like throwing black goo into a perfectly pristine energy circuited system, which is your nervous system, your CPU unit, and just slowly trying to fry that. So it takes a while, it takes hours for you to get back, because you're bottlenecking this energy, this dark energy and black goo. And then people's faces change and start changing in front of you. And there's other side effects like sickness. So you can get healed from strange fire infection. But anyways, Marduk Ra, Rue Hunger Games. Marduk Ra, he was using a certain area and this green house there that he was actually manifesting into a body in with green eyes, this man with green eyes and a funny hat that was like a pointy hat, and then going across the street to a waste disposal site, which had another weird shaped building that looked like a funny shaped hat. So there would be this green light that would pop on when the Hunger Games began there, and this huge back parking lot that had just tons of mangled and gnarly branches just twisted and twisted around this huge fence area that was like a mile long. These vines and the nature supernaturally twisted into the fence to actually make a double fence in this area, so you couldn't see into this area. So this building was called the Milky Way Transporters, and they were trying to synthesize a special kind of monoatomic, like milk substance that we knew how to make, and they were trying to manufacture it themselves. So we called these truckers the Milky Way smugglers. And then kids were freed from the 2 rotting houses that were across from these Milky Way drivers that had big silver tanks on them, and everyone that was in this Milky Way driving unit was possessed and sent from the kingdom of darkness, some of which came out from cloning centers, some of which were synthetic humans, non-humans. So this place was also connected to Popeyes, which was where the Scurvy Crew Old Men Pirates hung out, which is where you get the Pirates of the Caribbean and the worship of the Momo octopus entity, Cthulhu. So the Old Men Pirate Cthulhu worshippers were here and actually had a Cthulhu temple in Oz that actually had 8 windows around it and was shaped like a dome. They had this blue, like squid, like ink in this octopus entity before the building was even called Popeyes, and it was in like this pit behind the building. And this connected to a dirt road that led to this little white house by some batting cages. And in front of this was a golden palace, it was named, which was an Asian trafficking spot that had a portal to China in it and a sign pointing downwards that said drive-through. So Popeyes was actually about popping out a child's eyeball that had looking glass, as the children from Montauk that survived were extensions of the tower. So you organically became an extension of looking glass in your peripheral. So you could use fake looking glass and fake timelines and artificial timelines to throw the enemy off their course when other people had the real deal. So behind the DQ building was an abandoned batting cage that is now all decrepit, and it's all shot out with bullet holes in it, where there was an energy fenced batting cages. That was horrific there because this was like electric cages, not regular batting cages. And this was like a soul cage entrapment facility, and huge like electrical wires were sticking up out of the cement and stuff. The circular landscape of stones in this area would actually sometimes literally shift reality, because we would see reality shift in front of us sometimes and then move around like a circle of stones. And in front of this was a creepy old ice cream cone statue that was just lingering there and cracked, and this big jagged wall of stones that was still upholding the structure, and an old shopping cart that had empty milk bottles in it from the Milky Way smuggler transporters Hunger Game days. So by Ra's grave was this long silver short building that was low to the ground, like a shrunken elongated barn roof looking structure with 2 little windows in the front of it that were like black windows. This building was disgusting. And it was in a junkyard, and it was guarded by a black truck that parked right in front of it and had 2 green like plants in front of the windows, so you couldn't see in there because there was black snake eyes looking out of this building. And this was a snake man, as we encountered many snake men in Bolivia, Queen of the South, and other things like that had to be snuffed out. So the snake man was guarding it, and he guarded the snake Apophis that was actually in this building in physical manifest form about 100 feet long or more. So in front of the truck was also like 3 green and black waste disposal sheds. These weren't regular recycling or garbage units. These were actually cages, and kids would be put in there that we saw and witnessed, and then fed to the snake inside of the building. It's like hungry hippos, but hungry Apophis. So you couldn't look at this black snake eyes too long, or it would entrance you, and it would send psi signals to your brain. Your mind had to be sealed and guarded from the frequencies, for one, because if it paralyzed you, then it could eat you. And this whole thing's body was black. Its eyes were black. This was the mystery serpent of Egypt. So what ended up happening was that Archangel Raguel of Justice came to the rescue after the weight. They had this like scale that you drove up on, when you measure the weight of like aluminum cans or something. This weight would go to digital numbers on the recycling building platform, and then it would start flashing different numbers like 000 and time resets and codes, and then the Hunger Games would start. So then you would be chased through this whole entire junkyard area, and then had energy weapons blasted at you. So we were inside of semi-truck trailers and containers catching fire because the bushes were actually blasting us with energy weapons and putting huge holes into the semi-containers that were there. So what happened with the snake Apophis is that Archangel Raguel put the old mystery snake to waste. This thing rose up with its belly full, and Raguel said, "Enough is enough," and he served justice. He vindicated. So the snake looked like when it rose up, like it actually was an old snake from the old world, like in the Garden of Eden, like bipedal, like it had legs almost and arms and could speak. So the snake rose up and it looked like it had silver armor on its scales when it stood up in the air. And because the tin roofing was like wrapped around its body, and it was like seeing a whirlwind of justice happening and a whirlwind of justice screeching through the dimensions because Raguel dismantled Apophis's silver tin metal armor because this snake was so icky. It was like trying to hold on to its feasting and hide under these tin metal I don't know what you call it, roof tiles or whatever. It was just like pieces of tin that's on top of a barn. And it was trying to use that as like its shield. So then Raguel shredded that with heavenly weapons and by the sheer sound of his voice. And then the metal flew all over the junkyard into multiple pieces. And Apophis was cut up and shriveled into the ground. And then the feed boxes were destroyed because they had innocent blood on them. So there was a statue also in front of this area, in the front of this house, as a tribute to Marduk. And the man, the body that he embodied, wore an odd-looking hat that was slightly pointy when he was in this man's body, and he had green eyes, black hair. And then what he did is he had these tree-like people, these beings, like Root that you see in Guardians of the Galaxy, that these things ended up, they were so malevolent, and their faces. They ended up getting petrified into the fences as they tried running and chasing us. And if you go past this area, you can still see their faces meshed and like mangled, like they're melted into these gnarly tree branches that are like wrapped up violently inside of every piece of the steel fencing. And they're holding the fence still together. So these things would get animated, come into the parking lot and scare kids half to death so that they would submit to Marduk RAs suggestions and lies and basically surrender themselves to this false god because of the so-called magic and miracles that he was doing there and things that he would promise them. So these things were like wicked tree nature spirits, and this was just, it was a form of like necromancy that I had never seen before because it just came out of trees and nature. So the kids who feared Marduk Ra and ended up running down his green mile game when the green light would flash on with it was really tall up with these telephone poles, the lights that were used there. It would start in the Milky Way parking lot behind the trucks. When the green light flashed on the telephone pole lights, these kids that surrendered themselves, they ended up getting buried there in that parking lot because some got recycled because he promised them reincarnation, which is not the same as pure translation and time travel. And his way was a way that stripped the person of all that was precious to them because they sacrificed themselves to an idol and lost themselves. And he did things like he resurrected a body out of the ground, and somehow that convinced some of the children that maybe this thing was a god. But you see, even in the Old Testament, they put their staves on the ground, and Pharaoh, the spirit of slavery, which is Pharaoh, and turned this, they're just counterfeiting everything that the Most High can do, which is what sorcery is. Whatever sorcery does, and transporting in time, teleporting, things like that, they're just copying what the Most High can do because you can always do it better. And it wasn't even snakes that the staffs turned. They turned into crocodiles, actually, which is the correct translation. So the Hunger Games ended in battles, like I said, with the bushes near Red's giant Hamburg Black Cross Valley, which overlook an area where kids were actually running through a hoop of strange fire, and other things were there, and many things buried, mafia evidence, you name it, way back to the 30s even. Because what that black giant cross means is giant worship, which is Nimrod worship, and Hamburg means castle, Fourth Reich, Hunger Games reference. So during this time as well, there was 2 AI arenas that were going on with the kids that we also had to have victory and triumph over. first one, which started at Montauk. And one was called Rink, and the other one was called Cortana. One was male, one was female. Cortana ran a spaceship. Rink was created at Montauk. So these two programs mapped out everything about the kids. And then sometimes an AI would be put into a child's body, tricking the kids to think it was a real child. So there's very sinister things that went on. And then after the Hunger Games, John went into this memento loop, and then only a handful of secret space program kids continued in operational capacity that was consistently being tested, and character integrity was constantly being stretched thin and proven to ensure optimal timeline cohesion amidst all probabilities. So that was the mainline factor, really. With any operative in time travel, it was always character resolve, because that's where trust would lie. Because if you didn't have solidity, composition, a good constitution, if you had a bad heart, it would manifest. Everything had to be revealed about you. Nothing could be covered up and hidden, because you could go and you could scout it out in the future timeline and look at it and see what you would do in a certain instance. So if you didn't have like this warhorse strength to be like a straight arrow that could be shot into the dark and follow through and come out unscathed, which is what the Pony Express jump started us for to begin with, then you probably wouldn't make it in the time travel program. So 2021 to 2022 will be the ultimate canceling, clearing out of all old jumps, kind of like hashing it out and smoothing over any inconsistencies, any old bumps in the fabric of space and time, like X-Men Days of Future Past, where all selves are in congruency, confluency, synchronized, and pointed to the success of all timeline pincering off. So I see this as crochet loops. They're all in a row, lined up together. All travelers are aware of what they've done, fully awake. The loops are completed. They're aware of what they've done. They have been decompressed. They have been unraveled. Some start out with 10 years of decompression. Some start out with 100 years of decompression. Fully awake, in alignment with all past moves, maneuvers, missions that scouted out this exact point of time for all of us to come together now in origin, in origination, and in pure intent. So the needle that's linking and will thread all of those loops, those closed and completed loops that are just waiting there, like in a line, like you're doing a crocheted blanket. They're multifashioned in a brilliancy and an ingenuity of divine counsel, and the Time Bureau's connection to heavenly hosts, time mission directors, all in agreement, special access councils in queue, many things sorted out, allotted, secret activation commanders, and others. This is like a needle that will link all old fabrics of space and time, and the work that was done throughout it that's been documented. It will all come together into this magnificent tapestry, into the future window of time. And that will be a portal which we will go through together, with DNA being the thing that allows for higher heavenly portals to be accessed. And it can only happen in a refining process. If you have seals, shields, and a refinement that's been done in all of your cellular networks. So this was a soul group work that would look like an Elysian field painting when we see it all clearly come together. And it's like an accordion unraveling for each traveler, creating a sweet melody when it's individually unraveled, and it's unraveled in tender mercies when you submit to the Most High, because you are an archive and you have rare spiritual holdings inside each one of your beings that are precious, and secrets that the Most High hid into our very stitch work. The Ruach HaKodesh, the Shekinah, is the one who's the comforter, like a blanket around us that stitches our garments and refines our armor and our weapons of warfare. So she's the one that works into our very intricacies and details of our souls and spirits. She's the details and everything to be revealed in Elohim's timing, purpose, and reasons, so that we can understand the plans, the blueprints, and then also better understand our own selves and who and what we are and to whom we belong to most of all. When we get there, time will be filtered through us, and time gates will be gone through, and last time gates will be gone through. As the time wall itself has been taken away from Lucifer that held it in the North Pole for a while, and then it was mobilized into smaller time walls by studying people who have been translated in time. The NSA, NASA without the A, space fences, everything that they're involved with, the quantum realms, quantum tracking. They have mastered how to utilize time walls and time boxes and things about the force of time and time gates. So time itself will be filtered through us as in a quantum Faraday cage together, in like a field together, and new missions accepted to smooth out all the rough edges of 1,000 years of time docketed and energy locketed recorded events and their holographic backups. Nothing will have been done in vain, and all activities will be weighed into something useful, something resourceful, something that can be referenced, and something that can propel us and motivate us and initiate us into an echelon-like trajectory that will reveal and disclose layers and layers of galactic dispersals and releases that will edify mankind into a more light-based apparatus. So these will be like individual and group discharges, because some people that have been in the time travel program carry with them like atomic energy even. So that's why dark factions would want to harness those people and trap those people to, they've gotten all the research they really need, but those who fell through the cracks, they just don't have much time left to make it. So bless you all. Until next time.